Memory items, cabin altitude warning or rapid depressurization. Don oxygen masks and set regulators to 100%. Establish crew communications. Pressurization mode selector, manual. Outflow valve switch, hold in close until the outflow valve indication shows fully closed. If cabin altitude is uncontrollable, passenger signs on, passenger oxygen switch on, go to the emergency descent checklist. That's cabin altitude warning or rapid depressurization memory items complete. Memory items, emergency descent. Announce the emergency descent. Pilot flying will advise the cabin crew via the PA, this is the captain, emergency descent. The pilot monitoring will advise ATC and obtain the area altimeter setting. Passenger signs, on. Without delay, descend to the lowest safe altitude or 10,000 feet, whichever is higher. Engine start switches, both continuous. Thrust levers, both reduce thrust to the minimum or as needed for anti-ice. Speed brake, flight detent. If structural integrity is in doubt, limit airspeed as much as possible and avoid high maneuvering loads. Set target speed to MMO/VMO. Emergency descent, memory items complete. Memory items, aborted engine start. Engine start lever, cut off. Aborted engine start, memory items complete. Memory items, engine limit or surge or stall. Auto throttle, disengage. Thrust lever, confirm, retard until engine indications stay within limits or the thrust lever is closed. Engine limit or surge or stall, memory items complete. Memory items, loss of thrust on both engines. Engine start switches, both, flight. Engine start levers, both, cut off. When EGT decreases, engine start levers, both, idle detent. If EGT reaches a red line or there is no increase in EGT within 30 seconds, engine start lever, confirm, cut off, then idle detent. If EGT again reaches a red line or there is no increase in EGT within 30 seconds, repeat as needed. And while that's loss of thrust on both engines memory items complete, worth considering is at or above level 270, set airspeed to 275 knots. Below 270, set airspeed to 300 knots. Also, do not wait for a successful engine start before starting the APU. Memory items, APU fire. APU fire switch, confirm, pull rotate to the stop and hold for 1 second. APU switch, off. APU fire memory items complete. Memory items, engine fire or severe damage or separation. Auto throttle if engaged, disengage. Thrust lever, confirm close. Engine start lever, confirm cutoff. Engine fire switch, confirm pull. To manually unlock the engine fire switch, press the override and pull. If the engine fire switch or engine overheat light is illuminated, engine fire switch, rotate to the stop and hold for 1 second. If after 30 seconds the engine fire switch or engine overheat light stays illuminated, engine fire switch, rotate to the other stop and hold for 1 second. Engine fire or engine severe damage or separation, memory items complete. Memory items, engine overheat. Auto throttle, if engaged, disengage. Thrust lever, confirm close. If the engine overheat light stays illuminated, go to the engine fire or engine severe damage or separation checklist. Engine overheat, memory items complete. Memory items, Runaway Stabiliser. Control column, hold firmly. Autopilot if engaged, disengage. Auto throttle if engaged, disengage. Control column and thrust levers control airplane pitch, attitude and airspeed. Main electric stabilizer trim, reduce control column forces. If the runaway stops after the autopilot is disengaged, do not re-engage the autopilot or auto throttle. That would be runaway stabilizer memory items complete. However, if the runaway continues after the autopilot is disengaged, stab trim cutout switches both cut out. If the runaway continues, stabilizer trim wheel, grasp and hold. Runaway stabilizer memory items complete. Memory items, airspeed unreliable. Autopilot, if engaged, disengage. Auto throttle, if engaged, disengage. Flight director switches both off. Set the following gear up: pitch, attitude, and thrust. Flaps extended, 10 degrees nose up and 80% N1. Flaps up, 4 degrees nose up and 75% N1. Airspeed unreliable, memory items complete. Memory items, takeoff configuration. Assure correct airplane takeoff configuration. Takeoff configuration, memory items complete. Memory items, landing configuration. Assure correct airplane landing configuration. Landing configuration, memory items complete. Memory items, warning horn intermittent or warning light cabin altitude or takeoff configuration. If the intermittent warning horn sounds or a cabin altitude light illuminates in flight at an airplane flight altitude above 10,000 feet MSL, don the oxygen masks and set the regulators to 100%. Establish crew communications. Go to the cabin altitude warning or rapid depressurization checklist. And that is the warning horn intermittent or warning light cabin altitude or takeoff configuration memory items complete. However, if the intermittent warning horn sounds or a takeoff config light illuminates on the ground when advancing the thrust levers for takeoff, assure correct airplane takeoff configuration. And that is warning horn intermittent or warning light cabin altitude or takeoff configuration memory items complete. Memory items, approach to stall or stall recovery, pilot flying. Initiate the recovery. Hold the control column firmly, disengage autopilot and auto throttle, smoothly apply nose down elevator to reduce the angle of attack until buffet or stick shaker stops. Nose down stabilizer trim may be needed. Continue the recovery. Roll in the shortest direction to wings level if needed. Advance thrust levers as needed. Retract the speed brakes. Do not change gear or flap configuration except during liftoff. If flaps are up, call for flaps 1. Complete the recovery. Check airspeed and adjust thrust as needed. Establish pitch attitude. Return to the desired flight path. Re-engage the autopilot and auto throttle if desired. Approach to stall or stall recovery memory items for the pilot flying complete. Memory items, approach to stall or stall recovery for the pilot monitoring. At all times, monitor altitude and airspeed. Verify all needed actions have been done and call out any omissions. Call out any trend towards terrain contact. Additionally, set the flap lever as directed. Approach to stall or stall recovery memory items for the pilot monitoring complete. Memory items for the GPWS Caution. For both pilot flying and pilot monitoring, correct the flight path, airplane configuration, or airspeed. GPWS Caution memory items complete. Memory items for a GPWS warning. Activation of pull up or terrain pull up or obstacle pull up or any other situation resulting in unacceptable flight towards terrain. Memory items are, for the pilot flying, disengage autopilot, disengage autothrottle, aggressively apply maximum thrust, simultaneously roll wings level and rotate to initial pitch attitude of 20 degrees, retract speed brakes. If terrain remains a threat, continue rotation up to the pitch limit indicator if available, or stick shaker or initial buffet. Do not change gear or flap configuration until terrain separation is assured. Monitor radio altimeter for sustained or increasing terrain separation. When clear of terrain, slowly decrease pitch attitude and accelerate. That is GPWS warning memory items for the pilot flying complete. Memory items, GPWS warning for the pilot monitoring. That's for activation of pull up or terrain pull up or obstacle pull up or other situations resulting in unacceptable flight towards terrain. The pilot monitoring will assure maximum thrust and verify all actions needed have been completed and call out any omissions. Also monitor vertical speed and altitude, radio altitude for terrain clearance and barometric altitude for MSA. Call out any trend towards terrain contact. That's GPWS warning memory items for the pilot monitoring complete. Memory items for the breakout procedure. Pilot flying will disengage the autopilot but leave the autothrottle engaged. The pilot monitoring will set the breakout heading, set the breakout altitude, turn both thrust directors off and then back on. Pilot flying will call engage heading select and turn to assigned heading and call engage level change. The pilot monitoring will engage heading select and level change on the MCP and read back breakout heading and altitude requirements to ATC. Pilot flying will continue to fly the breakout procedure and configure the aircraft as needed. Toga can be used if appropriate. Pilot monitoring will configure the airplane as directed by the PF, monitor airplane heading, speed and altitude. After the airplane is established on the breakout heading, the autopilot can be re-engaged as needed. That is the breakout procedure memory items complete. Memory items for rejected takeoff. Captain. Without delay, simultaneously close the thrust levers, disengage the auto throttle, apply max manual wheel brakes, or verify operation of RTO auto brake. If RTO auto brake is selected, monitor system performance, apply manual wheel brakes if the auto brake disarm light illuminates or deceleration is not adequate. Raise the speed brake lever. Apply reverse thrust up to the maximum amount consistent with conditions. Continue maximum braking until certain the aeroplane can stop on the runway. Meanwhile, the first officer will verify thrust levers closed, auto throttles disengaged, maximum braking applied. Verify speed brake lever up and call speed brakes up. If not, call speed brakes not up. Verify reverse thrust applied. When both reverse indications are green, call reverses normal or no reverse engine number 1 or no reverse engine number 2 or no reverses and call out omitted action items. First officer will call 60 knots. Captain will acknowledge checked. First officer will verify auto brake disarmed and call auto brake disarmed. Captain will respond checked. First officer will communicate the reject decision to the control tower as soon as practicable. That is rejected takeoff memory items complete. Memory items for TCAS traffic alert. Both pilots look for traffic using the traffic display as a guide, call out any conflicting traffic. Pilot flying, if the traffic is sighted, manoeuvre if needed. That is TCAS traffic alert memory items complete. Memory items, TCAS resolution advisory. Pilot flying. If maneuvering is needed, disengage the autopilot, disengage the autothrottle. Smoothly adjust pitch and thrust to satisfy the RA command. Follow the planned lateral flight path unless visual contact with the conflicting traffic requires other action. For both pilots, attempt to establish visual contact, call out any conflicting traffic. That is TCAS Resolution Advisory, memory items complete. Memory items for a TCAS RA climb in the landing configuration. Pilot flying will disengage the autopilot and autothrottle. Advance thrust levers forward to ensure maximum thrust and call for flap 15. Pitch to satisfy the RA command. Follow the planned lateral flight path unless visual contact with the conflicting traffic requires other action. Pilot monitoring will verify maximum thrust and position the flap lever to 15. Pilot monitoring will verify a positive rate of climb on the altimeter and call positive rate. Pilot flying verifies a positive rate of climb on the altimeter and calls gear up. Pilot monitoring sets the landing gear lever to up. Both pilots attempt to establish visual contact, call out any conflicting traffic. That is TCAS RA climb in the landing configuration memory items complete. Memory items, upset recovery, nose high. Both pilots recognize and confirm the developing situation. Pilot flying will disengage the autopilot, disengage the autothrottle. Recovery. Apply nose down elevator. Apply as much elevator as needed to obtain a nose down pitch rate. Apply appropriate nose down stabiliser trim. Reduce thrust. Roll, that is adjust bank angle, to obtain a nose down pitch rate if required. Then complete the recovery. When approaching the horizon, roll to wings level. Check airspeed and adjust thrust. Establish pitch attitude. That is nose high recovery. Memory items for the pilot flying complete. Memory items, upset recovery, nose low for the pilot flying. Both pilots recognize and confirm the developing situation. Pilot flying, disengage autopilot, disengage autothrottle. Recover. Recover from stall if needed. Then roll in the shortest direction to wings level. If bank angle is more than 90 degrees, unload and roll. Complete the recovery. Apply nose up elevator. Apply nose up trim if needed. Adjust thrust and drag if needed. That is upset recovery nose low for the pilot flying, memory items complete. Upset recovery, pilot monitoring, memory items. Both pilots will recognize and confirm the developing situation. Pilot monitoring will call out attitude, airspeed, and altitude throughout the recovery. Verify all needed actions have been done and call out any continued deviation. Upset recovery for the pilot monitoring, memory items complete. Memory items, wind shear caution. For predictive wind shear caution alert, monitor radar display. Both pilots will maneuver as needed to avoid the wind shear. Wind shear caution memory items complete. Memory items for the pilot flying for a manually flown wind shear escape maneuver. The pilot flying will call wind shear toga. Disengage autopilot. Push either toga switch. Aggressively apply maximum thrust. Disengage autothrottle. Simultaneously roll wings level, rotate towards an initial pitch attitude of 15 degrees, retract speed brakes. Follow flight direct toga guidance if available. Do not change flap or gear configuration until wind shear is no longer a factor. Maintain wings level to maximize climb gradient unless a turn is required for obstacle clearance. Monitor vertical speed and altitude. Do not attempt to regain lost airspeed until wind shear is no longer a factor. That is the end of the memory items for a manually flown wind shear escape maneuver. Memory items, wind shear escape maneuver using Autoflight. While flying, we'll call wind shear toga. Push either toga switch, verify toga mode enunciation, verify go-round thrust. Retract speed brakes, monitor system performance. Do not change flap or gear configuration until wind shear is no longer a factor. Monitor vertical speed and altitude. Do not attempt to regain lost airspeed until wind shear is no longer a factor. That is the wind shear escape maneuver using the autopilot PF memory items complete. Memory items wind shear escape for the pilot monitoring. Pilot monitoring will verify maximum or go-round thrust. Verify all needed actions have been completed and call out any omissions, and advise ATC wind shear escape. Then monitor vertical speed and altitude, call out any trend towards terrain contact, descending flight path, or significant airspeed changes. Wind shear escape maneuver memory items for the pilot monitoring complete.